Hi, Dr. Watson here. In this tutorial video, we'll be discussing virtual instruments in GarageBand. GarageBand does not trigger external sounds, the sounds that you might have on a synthesizer keyboard. Instead, when you play sounds into GarageBand, usually with a controller keyboard that has no sounds built in, this controller keyboard just triggers internal sounds in GarageBand. These internal sounds are rendered via software that is part of GarageBand. So in a sense, two things are happening. You're triggering the sound on a device such as a MIDI keyboard, but instead of the sounds coming from that MIDI keyboard, the sounds are coming from the software. Let's go ahead and start with an empty project in GarageBand. The default instrument that shows up is an electric piano, and so that would be an example of a virtual instrument. I'll play the keys of my controller keyboard, and it triggers the internal software sounds. So just keep those two things straight. We have a virtual instrument, which is part of the software, and then we have a controller, which usually is some kind of a keyboard that triggers the sounds. The library is where we choose the sounds. So it's this little button here. It looks like a drawer. And when we open the library, we see both categories like bass or, let me just open this up a little wider. There we go. Bass, guitars, pianos, but inside of each of these categories are the specific instruments we have. So I'm going to go through the instruments, demonstrating some of them to you, playing my controller keyboard, and just to give you a tour of the sounds, maybe help you decide what are your favorite sounds. Let's start with under keyboards, which are things like piano. Let's start with the piano, and there's only one sound, at least I have loaded. And again, GarageBand comes with many useful sounds, but sometimes you can purchase additional sound libraries, different virtual instrument libraries. So depending on what you have on your computer, you may have more. But here's our grand piano or Steinway. And if I had a sustain pedal connected to my keyboard, I would be able to do sustain and things like that. So it sounds like a piano. All these instruments, if I play them idiomatically, the way that an instrumentalist would, they're going to sound more like the instrument. Give an example. So if I play that piano like a Mozart piece, it'll sound convincingly like a piano. Some other keyboards. Here we have, let's go to the electric piano. And so that sounds like a 60s or 70s electric piano, and there's several different sounding electric pianos. All right, so maybe a more contemporary sound for that. You could go to these organ sounds, like a classic rock organ. And you may be able to use a pitch bend or a modulation wheel on your keyboard to give it a more idiomatic sound, but you've got that. You've also got this grand organ is more of a classical or a church organ. So that gives you more of that church organ sound. Claves are the things like Stevie Wonder used. There we go. How about this one? And 70. There we go. Let me go down an octave. That's Stevie Wonder's Superstition. All right. Other keyboards. We've done electric piano, piano, and organs and claves. I think we'll move on. So under the bass category, here's a fingerstyle bass. That's just a traditional. You might use that in pop music, but there's some other ones. I kind of like the upright bass more for jazz. And again, if I play it with that walking bass pattern, it sounds more convincing. So there aren't a whole lot of basses, but there are some. And then some other comping instruments. I mentioned keyboards, the kind of instrument you would, let's go back to piano, for instance. If I was playing in an ensemble, right, I might accompany. So sometimes those are called comping instruments. And another comping instrument would be guitar. It could be a lead, but it could also just be playing an accompaniment. This guitar, I have an acoustic guitar, down an octave, and I have a hard rock guitar. And then roots rock. I will say, again, if you play these idiomatically, like a guitar player might strum them, it might sound more like that instrument. So those are some comping instruments. There are also a bunch of padding instruments. Things like synthesizers have pads, and they lay down these sort of atmospheric, ambient, ethereal backgrounds. So here's a pad. Has a lot of vibrato. Here's one called Breathy Vox. Or Power Pad. Anyway, so those are pads. Of course, in the synthesizer category itself, you might find things like basses. All right. Or leads. You know, the synthesizer could also be the lead as well. All right, so those are synthesizers, which could be used as comping instruments. And I guess I should get over to string pads, because they're almost always used in pop songs as a background. Right, so the strings can certainly be pads. But speaking of leads, we mentioned how the synthesizer might be a lead. So might some of these orchestral winds. The clarinet. Just depending on what kind of a song you're doing. The saxophone, not sure if you'll find it very convincing. A lot of the winds sound very hokey, actually. I want to point out, too, that there's this category at the bottom I've been sort of avoiding called Legacy, because I have some of the previous version of GarageBand sounds on my computer. I can go in and I also have Logic installed on my computer. I can go in and use some of the sounds from either Logic or from the previous version of GarageBand, or from some of the jam packs, these add-on instrument packs. And I find the Symphony Orchestra jam packs to be especially useful. So you should check that Legacy folder and see if you do have some instruments that are not in the main categories. So for instance, under woodwinds, here I've got a pretty nice bassoon. Let me go down to the bassoon register, talking about idiomatic. Right, so if I play that in the low register, it'll sound better. And some of the strings that are in the jam pack, the harp or a violin section. So I find that they're some of the best sounds that I can use for classical music in GarageBand's Legacy folder. Anyway, so hope you enjoy exploring all the sounds. You could literally spend hours doing that. When you find sounds you like, though, sometimes it's just fun to set up a metronome, hit the record button, and just start playing, start recording. So a simple MIDI recording would be as simple as hitting that record button after having chosen a sound. You know, try to play to the beat if you want, or not. Let me just do a little bass line. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can see that what I've recorded over here can now be played back. Let me turn off the metronome. And I have recorded it. And I'm not playing it on my keyboard. GarageBand is triggering it like a player piano. So find a sound you really like, set up a track. If you want to set up another track, hit the plus sign. And let me mute this. Hit the record button and just have fun.